Welcome back to the NFPT podcast, where we make you feel confident walking into your CPT exam. I'm your host, Erin Mahoney, General Manager of NFPT, and today we are talking about body mass index. Love it or hate it, body mass index is important for CPT testing and for your work with clients because they'll have questions and you need to be able to provide answers. Speaking of answers, let's start talking through what a sample BMI test question might look like. But first, let's remember one thing. Body mass index and what that looks like, that is part of fitness assessments. And fitness assessments is nested under the testing domain of program development and implementation. So that is why it is important, is because it is mapped to one of those larger topics on your CPT exam blueprint. All right. I am here to read you a test question, then your answer options, and then we will talk about which one is correct and incorrect, and then we'll talk more about body mass index. So here we go. A client has a BMI score of 26. What category do they fall under? Is it A, underweight, B, normal weight, C, overweight, or D, obese class 1? All right, so again, a client has a BMI score of 26. What category do they fall under? Is it underweight, normal weight, overweight, or obese class 1? Now remember, BMI is a calculation. It's their weight in pounds times 703 divided by their height in inches squared. So that's a lot. You're not going to have to be calculating that for exam day, but you will want to know what is considered normal weight, overweight, and obese. And in this instance, a client with a BMI score of 26 is going to fall into that overweight category, just barely, but still they are falling into that overweight category. Now, let's break down those different categories just a little bit more and talk a bit more also about BMI in general. So here we go. First of all, you could, of course, calculate BMI if you wanted to. There's also readily available through a quick internet search, and it is the same no matter what. You do not have to do the math for exam day, but you do need to know what the categories are. And the categories are going to be standard regardless of whether it is a male or a female client that you're working with. So anything under 18.5 is considered underweight. Anything between 18.5 and 24.9 is normal weight. Overweight is at 25.0 to 29.9. That's why our question, which the client had a score of 26, that is why they were falling in that overweight range. And then obese class 1 starts at 30 to 34.9, class 2, 35 to 39.9, and then obese class 3 is greater than 40. Now, remember, so all body mass index is taking into account is a client's height and their weight. That is it. It is not accounting for how much of that weight is fat versus muscle, which can be problematic. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that. Now, off to the right here, there are some different examples, like a client who is 5'6" at 165 pounds. They would be falling into the overweight category. Or on the other end of the spectrum, if we wanted to look at a client in the normal weight range, that would be 6 foot at 180 pounds, and they would be normal. Obese class 2 would be when you have somebody that is 5'2" at 210 pounds. Not quite to obese class 3, but still definitely in the obese category. And then lastly, a normal weight range would be somebody that is 5'9" at 155 pounds. Now, let's talk a little bit more about body mass index and the pros and cons. So it is helpful to know why it's used, and it's also helpful to know why you might not like it so much. So let's start with the pros. What are the pros of BMI? First of all, it's fast, free, and repeatable. It's just the height and the weight, and you can see where a client falls very quickly through an internet search. You only need a scale and to know how tall somebody is. You don't have to do circumference measurements. You don't have to do skin fold testing, none of that. And there is a very strong population level correlation with chronic disease risk. So what that means is the larger the volume is, in this case, people with BMI, you've got a huge volume of research and testing, and we know there is a correlation with BMI and chronic disease risk. And it's still recognized as the benchmark. So that means your clients, medical professionals, will be referring to the BMI. And so you might have a client that is in great shape, but they are scoring into an overweight category on the BMI, and their doctor might address that. So you want to be able to know how to talk through those benchmarks. Now, it is a really good starting point for at-risk screening conversations. So if you've got a client that is in that obese category, you need to get them out of that obese category, all right? So that is the first conversation. And when you are first working with a client and they are scoring in those upper ranges, you are able to identify that they are likely at risk right away. The problems, it does not distinguish muscle from fat. We already said that. And it flags muscular athletes as being overweight. Now, it would be rare. So you might have a client that's falling into the obese category and they could be an athlete. They might not truly be obese, so to speak. Maybe they're overweight. That's where body composition testing comes into play. But you do want to know what these numbers are and where your client falls. And it ignores fat distribution. So we know that the waist to hip ratio is really important because visceral fat and fat around the center of the body carries with it higher risk for cardiometabolic disease. Body mass index isn't looking at where that weight is carried. And it also becomes less and less accurate in older adults and different ethnic populations. And the problem ultimately is it can mislead at weight extremes or during recomposition. So the cons are really big, but this number is still there and it is still widely used. So you need to know about it. And here are the reasons why it's widely used. This is all with the pros, right? It's quick and free. A doctor can quickly identify where a client falls for their BMI. It also helps with different population screening. So very quickly at a group level, so thinking about the CDC and the WHO, so very large groups that need to screen a population, they're able to assess the risk level of individuals. It's also important for client awareness. So most clients, they've heard of it. So if you have a talking point with them that they've already heard about, it makes it easier as a starting point for other conversations around what you're going to be assessing and reassessing and what's important and you're really going to be focusing on versus what might be a little less important. Now, also, the BMI is standardized. It is the same formula, same categories for everyone. You don't have to memorize men versus women. And so therefore, it's very easy to compare across different clients and studies. And then also it's used still because it's a research anchor. There have been decades and decades of studies using body mass index. So unfortunately or fortunately, it still remains a common reference point, especially for medical professionals and especially for these larger organizations that are doing population screening. And it also gives a trigger for deeper testing. And when we're talking about this, we're talking about clients who are going in talking to medical professionals. It very quickly prompts what types of additional assessments they should be going through, whether that's blood work. And then also for you, it's also flagging, okay, maybe we need to check out what your actual body composition is, what your waist to hip ratio is, and other biometrics that would give us a broader, more informed description of how your overall health and fitness levels are. So that's what we primarily need to know around body mass index. You want to know the ranges. You want to know why it's used. You want to know the pros and you want to know the cons. That's it for test day. No math. Remember, simplifying things is what makes NFPT different. So CPT success shouldn't be complicated. We offer a clear path with real human support and a 98% first-time pass rate for the people that go through our live study sessions. So if you haven't already, you need to enroll in an NFPT CPT today, or if you're in another CPT, you're still welcome to come check out our recorded exam prep series. They supplement any CPT program. All right, that's it on Body Mass Index. Stay well and keep moving. Today's episode is brought to you by Summit Professional Education. Unlock your potential with Summit Professional Education, your trusted partner for expert-led courses, flexible learning, and essential CEUs. Elevate your skills today at summiteducation.com.